Hello and thanks for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Abdul Malik Adio. First, the headlines. Nigerian doctoral student in Japan, Ikenna Nweke, gets commendation by President Muhammadu Buhari for virtue of honesty, integrity and contentment. Legislatures say Nigeria has the expertise to develop vaccines for COVID-19, challenges professionals to provide local solution. On the global scene, Brazil records 42,223 additional COVID-19 cases in 24 hours, second worst in the world. And many thanks for staying tuned. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has commended Nigerian doctoral student in the University of Abuja, Japan, Ikenna Nweke, for projecting values of honesty, integrity and contentment and decorum, making Nigerian proud. Mr. Ikenna Nweke returned a missing wallet with huge sum of money to the police and also turned down offers of percentage by the Japanese authorities. A statement by the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, says that should be the hallmark of a people, noting that good virtues and prosperity are the hallmark of every culture in Nigeria, while crime and criminality are exception. The president believes that Ikenna Nwoke's behavior clearly signposts what should hold the nation together, inspired by the solid foundation laid by most families, religious bodies and communities for success in life. He wishes Nweke the best in his studies and work as a teaching assistant in the university, urging all Nigerians home and abroad to keep celebrating the age-old irreplaceable attribute of honesty and decorum, and shun the microwave get-rich-quick tendencies that brings individual and collective shame. Now to health matters, the World Health Organization wants countries seriously hit by the coronavirus to wake up to the realities and take control of the pandemic as Brazil president waters down law on widespread use of face masks in the country. Adebola Brookslyn Sunday tells us more.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has watered down a law that would require face mask wearing in the country. The law approved the wearing of protective masks in public places, especially schools, churches and shops, as well as closed places. He said a clause in the law could lead to a violation of people's rights, citing a situation where someone could be fined for not wearing a mask in his own home. World Health Organization has urged countries that are heavily hit by the novel coronavirus to rise to the realities on ground and take control of the pandemic.
The proportion of people around the world who are seropositive does not provide us with a barrier against the second wave of infection or second peaks in the current waves. We really do have to double down on the control measures that we have at our disposal.
And this mutation, this D614G, was actually first noticed back in February. So it isn't something that is necessarily new. So it is something that has been circulating. It's been circulating in Europe, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Germany, and also in North America, in the Americas.
South Africa Disease Management Center has announced a record daily number of confirmed cases of COVID-19. The center reported over 9,000 positive cases. Most of the country's cases are now in Gauteng province, which comprises Johannesburg and the capital, Pretoria. The number of coronavirus cases around the world at about 7 p.m. Nigerian time now stand at 11,231,300, with 529,909 deaths and 6,373,234 recoveries, as published by the Coronavirus Research Center in Johns Hopkins University. From this figure, the share of African continent is 414,011 cases, 10,260 deaths, and 195,729 recoveries. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control also published the nation's portion as 27,564 positive cases, 628 deaths, and 11,069 recoveries.
And still on health matters, the House of Representatives says it believes Nigeria has the expertise to develop a vaccine for COVID-19, but it is wondering why it is taking this long for the expert to provide a local solution. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali has that update.
It was a lineup of government organizations in the medical and pharmaceutical research industry led by the Federal Ministry of Health, the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Nigeria Institute of Medical Research, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration and Control assembled before the lawmakers to give an update on the status of indigenous research aimed at achieving sustainable local solution for the pandemic. Chairman of the committee, Representative Haruna Mashilia, noted that Nigeria, like other countries, is in a race against time to find a vaccine.
If you look at Nigeria, nearly all the vaccines, if not all, in fact, it's all the vaccines that are being used in Nigeria are not made in Nigeria. We import them. Majority of essential drugs are also made outside Nigeria. So there is the need for the health sector to sit up.
Minister of Health, Dr. Osagi Hanire, says expertise, resources and ideas are being mobilized in that direction, in addition to Nigeria's involvement in the WHO's spearheaded trial of vaccines.
Nigeria is participating in WHO solidarity trial to find medicines that have efficacy against COVID-19. And the research division of Federal Ministry of Health is actively involved in Nigeria COVID-19 Research Consortium, which is a conglomerate of research entities from the government of Nigeria, NCDC, the academia, and the private sector.
The TMC, that's the Top Management Committee of the Ministry, based on the proposal that we put forward to them, have now graciously granted approval for NIPRI to put together an Artemiswa annual combination therapy that has the potential to potentially address COVID-19.
The general view at the meeting is that more needs to be done in terms of funding. In another development, the House Committee on Public Accounts, during a session with the Ministry of Finance, stressed that agencies of government must avoid actions that are contrary to financial regulations.
In this night assembly, this committee will do things differently. We will render accounts to Nigerians.
Accountability, the committee says, is a responsibility for public office holders. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
The Cross River State, the only state in Nigeria yet to formally record a confirmed case of COVID-19, now has a sample testing center at the Dr. Lawrence Enshaw Memorial Hospital, Calabar. The COVID-19 Task Force response team was at the facility to ascertain its preparedness to commence testing.
Now that people can freely travel from one state to the other, it becomes necessary for adequate preparation to test as many as possible in the states to curtail the spread of COVID-19. The testing center comprises double 8-cartridge gene expert machines, 1,056 PCR test kits with reagents and extraction kits. Takes 45 minutes to get sample results.
We have been doing TB testing with the gene expert currently in the lab, so we're just going to integrate the SARS-CoV-2 cartridges also, so they can be doing both TB and SARS-CoV-2 in this lab.
The team also commended the Federal Ministry of Health, NCDC, corporate organizations, and other partners for making the dream of a test center come to reality, but advised residents to be more cautious in their activities and approach the center when the need arises without fear of stigmatization. Being the only state that is yet to have any confirmed case of coronavirus disease in the country, and with the influx of people into the state and the setting up of this facility for testing, the state is now ready to ensure that everyone is safe. From Calabar, Paul Abel, NTA News.
Thanks, Paul. Now, 335 Nigerians have arrived the country from the United States of America through Ethiopia Airline. The returnees were held back due to the global lockdown occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic. Adiola Komi Akere reports that although they have been tested negative to COVID-19, the returning Nigerians must fulfill the mandatory health protocols for travelers. They are to undergo coronavirus tests at the NCDC Center in Yaba, as negative results remain the only condition upon which their travel passport will be released. They, however, commended the federal government for measures put in place to check the spread of COVID-19. Now, the federal government says increasing complaints by the public on the inability to access routine health care in most health facilities in the country for fear of uncertainty caused by COVID-19 is not acceptable. To ensure citizens are not denied their right to adequate health care services in the country, the Minister of Health and that of the Federal Capital Territory organized a one-day engagement with medical directors of hospitals in the Federal Capital Territory to address this challenge. Basi Taipan reports.
For some time now, the news making the rounds is that patients with other disease burden aside COVID-19 are denied access to medical treatment. The issue is what key players in the health sector and chief medical and medical directors of hospitals in the FCT are discussing in this hall.
Efforts to control COVID-19 must not be totally at the expense of allowing other diseases that are equally life-threatening to begin to thrive and increase mortality. That will be a serious setback.
Call it a debate and you won't be wrong. It was an avenue for opinion and counter-opinion. And one basic fact establishes that some health facilities actually reject patients. The big question here is why.
In an ideal place, malaria should not come to national hospital. There should be a primary care and secondary care that takes care of mild sickness. And it is only severe sickness, because the number of bed spaces are few. So if we can reserve our critical care for critically ill, then mortality rate will decrease. We have no reason to reject patients because of the support we have had. But there are many other teaching hospitals and indeed federal medical centers that have not enjoyed the privileges that we have enjoyed. And therefore, I think, as we have always said, government is not going to do that alone. I think private organizations should begin to adopt teaching hospitals or federal medical centers or indeed health facilities so that they can extend their corporate social responsibilities.
Considering the physician's oath taken by the men and women of medical profession, is there any justification for the rejection of patients?
Chief medical directors of all the public hospitals in the FCT have reassured us here no public hospital within the FCT will reject any patient.
Mindful of the fear of COVID-19 amongst Nigerians, especially health workers, who are said to account for 25% of the country's death statistics from the viral infection, government advice to the populace is to desist from indulging in self-medication, only to rush to the hospitals when things begin to get out of hands and usually too late. Basi Taikpan, NTA News.
Now joining us in the studio is a consultant family physician, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Dr. Nicholas Bamlung. It's good to have you join us on the news at 7 on NTA International.
In Nigerians.
Right. Now talk to me about what we'd like to know your take first. Rejection of patients by hospitals from an ethical standpoint. What's your take on this?
Thank you very much. The reality is that the ethics of the medical profession both protects the patient as well as the practitioner. And so it may not really be correct to say that physicians or doctors, as the case may be, will reject any patient for just no just reason. What is happening is that you all agree with me that the pandemic as it is, it's a problem that has devastated many countries, And in Nigeria, we are not peculiar. And what has happened is that because the mode of transmission of this illness, and the presentation simulates so many other diseases. For instance, malaria, as someone has pointed out, pneumonia, respiratory infections, and all that. And so most times the physician too has to take care of the fact that, look, you need to be protected. And so when patients come to the hospital, what normally will happen is that you will be screened. And when they ask you of what you are presenting with, and if there is any simulation to what looks like COVID-19, what will happen is that they will tell you, okay, it's either go do a test and come back, or if it is something that we think is not related to it, you are taken into the hospital and you are given the treatment that you require. But because, the public has the opinion that maybe when you tell a patient, look, go and get tested, they get agitated. Why? Because the testing center is not also very available. Right. And most hospitals, as you know, are not having this facility for testing. And by the time you tell a patient, go to NCDC, and he goes there, he spends 3, 4, 5 days, he has not gotten a result. Of course, if he had symptoms, it will definitely continue to increase. And the physician, on his part, has to ensure that whatever he's treating the right thing. One of the very difficult situations we have found ourselves is the fact that every facility is supposed to have a holding area. Right. This holding area should be able to say, look, when we are suspecting you, we keep you there, we manage you until your test result is out.
Yes,
but many places are not.
Interject here a bit. It's good you're talking about these test areas that's been, set aside, and looking at the fact that the federal government just gave directive to some hospitals in Abuja to actually carry out the test. When can a hospital or a medical facility turn back a patient?
I've just emphasized to you that it's unusual to say a hospital will turn back a patient. I don't think that is the situation. The situation is that when you come to a facility and you have symptoms simulating COVID-19, the likelihood is that the facility or the physicians attending will advise you, look, we have a holding area, but this holding area, maybe it is inadequate, it's not available at that point in time. So in order for you to be protected, or for the physician to be protected as well, go do a test. And when you get the result, if it is negative, of course, you will be taken care of. If it is positive, you will be sent to the isolation treatment center. But most patients, like I told you, because of agitation, telling somebody go and do a test when a test is kilometers away, obviously he's looking at it as rejection. But it's not really rejection as the case may be. And I think we must also emphasize the fact that, you see, as we practice medicine in our country, we must be mindful of the peculiarities that is confronting us. I had the CMD of National Hospital mentioning the fact that we have primary, secondary, and tertiary care. Yeah. Ordinarily, the tertiary care should be for specialized cases, for cases that you think should be handled at that level. While those simple ones of malaria, respiratory infections should be handled at secondary primary care. But that is not the case in our country. All over, you see, even in a teaching hospital, patients come as first line of consultation. And so because of that, there is that, usually a large troop of patients that will come. But as it is, I think with the increasing number of testing centers that the government has promised, I think gradually patients will begin to realize that, look, once you come to a facility and you go and do your test, within 6 hours the result is out. You are attended to. If you are positive, you are sent to the treatment center. If you are negative, the facility will treat you. I think those are just the challenges we are facing.
Dr. Nicholas, we do appreciate your insight in this topical issue. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're watching the news on NTA International. We'll take a break now. When we come back, with more news.
Let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. A Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now, the federal government says despite rapid spread of COVID-19 across the country, the 2020 farming season will experience bumper harvest. This will be achieved through redoubling of efforts in the provision of agricultural input to farmers across the country. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk, stated this in Lokoja, the Kogi state capital. Ilyasu Ali Yakubu report.
Over 200 communities in 10 local government areas of Kogi State are said to have been submerged in the 2018 flood, and as such, more than 16,000 farmers were affected in the disaster. Having distributed improved seedlings and agrochemicals earlier to farmers by the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, the final phase of the exercise of fertilizer distribution is continuing in the state. 114,315 bags of NPK 50 kg fertilizer is expected to be delivered in the state, and so far, out of this number, 54,900 bags have been delivered, and the balance of 59,415 is currently being distributed.
We appreciate the effort of Mr. President.
Give us this to increase our farm plot. We really appreciate.
The Humanitarian Affairs Minister said government will continue to give priority to the welfare of vulnerable Nigerians, especially those affected by disasters.
It is worthy of note that fertilizer distribution is the final phase of the federal government assistance to the farmers to enable them recover from the losses suffered in order to alleviate poverty and empower them.
With this effort of his and taking it through the states and the local governments and down to the farmers from the ministries, all the relevant ministries and agencies, we know we're going to get it right, inshallah.
The visit was used to deliberate extensively on the level of preparedness towards the prevention and mitigation of 2020 floods in the state. From Lokoja in Kogi State, Ilyasu Ali Yakubu, NTA News.
Next is Week in Review, and Uche Ugochukwu is our guide.
In the week under review, the federal government extended the second phase of ease of lockdown for another 4 weeks, effective from Tuesday, June 30, with a conditional lifting of interstate travel ban from the 1st of July and domestic flights to resume on the 8th of July. This was after the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 presented the 5th interim report on Nigeria's national response to the coronavirus pandemic to President Muhammadu Buhari. President Buhari, while in an interaction with members of the Presidential Economic Advisory Council, commended their outstanding support and guidance to his administration and tasked them to do more to exit Nigeria from the worrisome state of development. During the week, construction work on the $2.8 billion Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline project began. President Buhari, who presided over the virtual flag-off ceremony, described the project as fundamental to the nation's desire to not only industrialize but energize the entrepreneurial spirit of its populace. The Federal Executive Council approved about 20 billion naira to boost infrastructure in critical economic sectors. Meanwhile, the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency approved 140 naira 80 kobo to 143 naira 80 kobo for oil marketers as the new petrol retail price band for the month of July. In the course of the week, the United Nations Alliance on Poverty Eradication was launched in New York, creating a platform for the global community to collectively tackle the menace of poverty plaguing hundreds of millions of people around the world. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and President of UN General Assembly Professor Mohamed Tijani Bande led discussions on the form the global response on poverty eradication would take, and Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari also addressed the virtual meeting.
In Nigeria, with a population of about 200 million, over 54% of our people live in various stages of poverty, and the prospect of our population sliding further into extreme poverty is real.
These are highlights of major stories in the outgoing week. I am Uche Ugochukwu. Stay safe.
And on sports, NTA Sports 24 to break new ground as it embraces social media. Olumide Oguntala has the details on the sport update.
About 40 sports reporters from NTA stations across the country participated in a recently held sports summit through its first virtual conference, where they resolved to take the channel to the next level in line with international best practices. They also clamored for the creation of dedicated sports programs for evolving new ideas in the world of sports, laying emphasis on traditional sports, general sports, rather than football alone.
You have to have an application, a dedicated app for your station.
Reporters must familiarize themselves with all the new tricks.
We have to be able to understand our environment, look out for events.
Build a database very relevant to their production.
Looking at the challenges of modern day broadcasts, it is pertinent for us to brace up.
The key takeaway is the need to always refresh my skills. In
another development, the number of Nigerian athletes that will compete at the 2021 Paralympic Games in Tokyo continues to swell after Isao Ogunkunle and Faith Obiora qualify for the event based on their world rankings by the International Table Tennis Federation. 5 Nigerians picked their tickets after emerging champions in their various classes at the 2019 African Championships.
Come Tokyo 21, the 7 players will make Nigeria proud.
In Taekwondo, stakeholders have commended the leadership of the Federation in Nigeria and the international body for waiving the 2020 annual dues of the Global Membership System, GMS. The Federation said this is to further cushion the effect of coronavirus pandemic on its members. With this development, over 60 practitioners have renewed their membership, while the Federation recorded over 80 new sign-ups.
We've used it to register a lot of tournaments.
The aim of the system is to provide administration efficiencies among all Taekwondo organizations, national federations, and its members. With Sports Update, Olumide Oguntala, NTA News.
A sports update concludes the news at 7 on NTA International. Many thanks for watching. I'm Abdul Malik Adio.